Hey, so just for a bit of context, we we spoke yesterday, about 24 hours ago, actually, I think, and you were obviously in a pretty dark space at that point. So I guess the first question is really, where are you now?
Well, I'm up, and I'm on the way up, which is good.
Whereabouts on your sort of curve? Would it be fair to say you bottomed out yesterday?
Yeah, completely.
Yeah. And what was it that so where are you now? If you imagine a kind of, you know, where?
Ascent on the ascent. I mean, it's by no means fixed, but I think I know if I'm careful, I know that it can only go up from here.
So after we finished speaking yesterday, what process did you go through? I mean, to get you to where you are now?
So I'm trying to think what time we finished. Probably about
It's
1 o'clock.
about this time, I think.
About 1 o'clock, yeah. Actually, it helped. I think it helped to talk. Um, it was quite an interesting analytical conversation, wasn't it? So, and the talking helped. So I got up. Virgin and Chloe came down to the boat. They had lunch. I wasn't overly that hungry, but they had lunch. I mean, it wasn't instant. I wasn't like, yeah, let's go out. It wasn't instant at all. But I knew that I wanted to try and do something, anything. Do you know what I mean? So we ended up going out. We took Chloe out on kayaks. It's weirdly busy on the towpath here, and we thought actually the best way to self-isolate was to actually be on the river itself. So yeah, we took the kayaks out, but that wasn't an instant thing. It didn't happen until about 3 o'clock. So in terms of a day, I didn't get dressed until about 2:45. I was still knocking about, being miserable until about 3 o'clock. And it was me still plastering on a game face when I was on the kite. You'd think, oh, isn't that lovely going out on a kayak? And yeah, it should be really lovely, but it, you know, it was a glazed lovely. If you went out on a kayak, you'd be like, oh my god, that's really amazing. But I went out yesterday and it was like under a cloud on a kayak. So, but I still advocate that there is something in endorphins, and trying to kayak with a 2-year-old in your lap is hard. So there was some exercise involved in it, which was good. I mean, it did somewhat come to a halt when she started screaming and whatever else. So she had a bit of a hiss of it towards the end, and we came back. But I didn't go back to bed, which was good. So I didn't return back to the duvet. I wasn't ready to cook or engage in things like that. That wasn't going to happen. I think we ordered a curry because we were just. But that in itself was a treat, and it was nice. So, and then I spent the evening. I watched the interview that we did.
And how was that?
It was cathartic is the word for it. It was cathartic. It's a bit like therapy, some sort of new
Because you would think,
therapy.
yeah, you would think it would be quite, given some of the things that you were saying in that interview, you would think it would be quite painful to be confronted with that. But you found it cathartic. So I'm interested in how you kind of rationalize that.
It's interesting that you say that I would find it painful. It's painful to be there. Like my husband was sat with me for some of the editing, like for me looking at the interview, and he said, what does it feel like to watch it back? Like, I guess for you guys, you must watch it and think, God, that must be really, hard to watch. It's not hard to watch. I went through it. So it's not difficult to watch. That's my life. I quite often go into that place. It's not, and I guess yesterday evening I still wasn't truly out of it, but just watching the video was useful because, of course, it gave me something to focus on. It doesn't. Is it? So you've watched it as well because we've edited it together. So is it?
Yeah, no, I only asked that because I'm sitting here now. I'm looking at me, thinking, God, in fact, I'm trying not to look at me at the moment. I'm trying to look at you instead because I just hate looking at myself. So, the idea of watching myself in a incredibly vulnerable state sounds horrible,
Well, we haven't, at this point now, where we're doing this interview because we're following it up the next day, we haven't actually put it out to the public, so I'm not really exposed or vulnerable.
So you have no idea how bad I look, general public. Okay. Sorry.
Can we talk about...
Sorry, we're focusing on you, aren't we? That's right. Okay.
Can we just talk about that for a minute? So in an editing process, you're going, oh my God, my hair and my double chin or whatever. I'm the most vulnerable ever. And you're concerned about a double chin and a bad shot of you. That is the epitome of the fact that we are all pretty much worried about ourselves.
Yeah, well, there's a metaphor for life in general. Anyway, back to you.
But is it difficult for you to, you're like one of my closest friends, is it difficult for you to watch that then?
Yes. I mean, yes and no. I know you pretty well. And it would, when we first, I remember when we did Blackout, you, a year ago now or so, you showed us some footage, similar footage. I mean, even more kind of less, it wasn't an interview, it was just footage of you going through that situation on your own, and the fact that there was no talking actually made it more powerful. And that was quite shocking. And I didn't know you as well then. Now I think, over the last year or so, I'm prepared, and we talk a lot, so I know what to expect. So I'm less shocked, but it's not pleasant. You don't want anyone that you care about to go through that, really. So why was it a catharsis? I mean, look, watching it is one thing and recognizing that in yourself, but how did it help?
It's well documented that talking therapy is good for you, but in practice it's very difficult to do because, of course, in order to engage in talking to somebody, you have to expose yourself to the level that I exposed myself yesterday, or to the level that I exposed myself to the design team, where actually the footage that I sent you was of me just crying, having pulses and pulses of pain. And that truly is exposing. I guess it's an exercise, it's a muscle that you have to engage in that sense. And I guess over the last year, between you and just talking to even talking to my husband, because I haven't overly done it for a long time, I would just go in the room and me and Burge wouldn't overly talk about it at all. So actually we're learning to cope with it as a couple. Talking is the hardest thing ever to do, and it's you know, do I phone these helplines? No. No, I don't. You know, I don't know who does, but it's not me. But I do know that talking does help, but it's really, I can't even begin to tell you. And also you've got to find the right person that you feel comfortable talking to. It might not be your husband, because that person might be too close to you. Sometimes it's quite often useful to talk to someone that is completely sort of disengaged from a situation and that can look at it from a different angle, you know. Like going to a doctor, so when you have to admit that maybe you need some medication, how would you feel going to a doctor and telling a doctor that you feel like you have episodes where you feel you suicidal and you don't want to live anymore? And if I said to you, Simon, if you're feeling like that, go and speak to your GP. Would you get on the phone tomorrow and be like, yep, I booked that appointment, get down there, no bother? How would you start that conversation?
I don't know. It's
Hi, my name's Simon. Feeling a bit crap.
I don't speak like that. That's the first thing. You've got to be accurate, okay?
But honestly, how do you start that conversation? And what if you don't get the GP that's understanding? You know, but I still, and that's an interesting thing to discuss, I still hate going to the doctors and talking about it, even though now I'm really articulate about it and I've made blackout and stuff. It fills me with dread to go to a GP and talk about it.
But I mean, this is part of the conversation we had yesterday, isn't it? I mean, so much of this, as accomplished as you are and as outspoken as you are about this, so much of this is about your perception of how other people judge you. I mean, it's deeply, deeply ingrained, this whole idea of weakness, isn't it? That you are showing weakness by not being able to beat this or get through this. You know, it's that kind of 50s mentality of pull yourself together, we all have bad days kind of stuff, isn't it?
I watched the interview back and realised that, well, I'll tell you, the first thing that I observed when I watched it back was the interview itself is living proof that talking works. Because if you listen to the tone of my voice, I was quiet. My voice was quiet, and it was miserable, and the tone was just horrible, wasn't it, at the beginning? And if you actually watch as I go along, it becomes more pronounced, a bit louder. I go from not turning my video on to turning my video on to sitting up. And so that was just spending 40 minutes talking to you. So that's living proof that talking helps. But as I watched it back and listened to myself, I realised that I'm a product of my generation. I'm 40 this year, and I was just reciting what society tells me, which is that people don't want to see this. And I don't want people to see this. I don't want people to perceive me as weak, because I don't want it to affect my progression in my career. Now, I'm lucky enough and old enough now to be established enough that actually I can just sort of wave a flag and say, if you don't like me, sod ya. Do you know what I mean? But if you're 20 going into this, I would understand why you would, I could sit here as much as you say, and I could sit here and advocate, you should talk, you should be honest, but actually, is the world ready to see people like that? If I turned a switch on, Simon, and put a pair of glasses on you, and actually you saw everybody's pain, I don't think the world's ready to see that.
the world, I think, is inherently self-obsessed, as we've kind of proved. And this is less, I think, about mental illness and more about just sharing and empathy with other people and allowing, you know, and perhaps if anything comes out of this coronavirus nonsense, you know, it's a renewed focus, however transient, on actually giving a damn about other people, you know. And that's not really an answer to your question, but I don't know. I mean, I'm in a difficult position because I know you well, and I've been working in this field with you for a while now. So I'm more clued in than your average person about, you know, mental illness. And I have, even though I'm not, there's no way that I could even pretend to understand what you go through or what you were going through yesterday. I at least can rationalize it, and you know, I know from you what you're going through. I don't know, is the world ready? I mean, what is the world ever ready for anything? You know, I mean, you just put yourself out there, and you know, a lot of what we do falls in kind of this gray area between science and art, doesn't it? I mean, you know, an art's a question, not an answer. You ask a question and get a response back.
You said in your interview to me that everybody knows that I'm productive and that I work really hard. And that's fine. Everyone does know that. But I've just shown you that that's not the case. I'm not always productive. Sometimes I'm just in bed. I've also had 20 odd years to deal with my condition and get to where I am now. But try and apply those perceptions to somebody who's younger and maybe losing the battle completely. So let's take, if you took the 20-year-old me, even if you took the 19-year-old me who was catatonic and in bed the whole time, what would your perception be of me who just stayed indoors all day? I got signed off work because I couldn't engage socially with anybody, you know. What would your perception be of somebody like that? Laziness? Why don't you just get up, snap yourself out of it? La 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 la. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. But of course, when you were 19, that's 20 years ago. And the world was a very different place 20 years ago. So if I'm sure you know, if I was an employer 20 years ago, I'd probably be the same as, I'd probably be very similar to what you're saying, because there was no frame of reference. The society didn't accept mental illness in the way that it does now. And that's not to say we've solved mental illness. We haven't at the moment. But, you know, we're a way down the road. I mean, you know, we're now where every company has a mental health policy of some sort. It may not be great. It may be superficial or chicken shit tokenism, but at least it's there and it's a watchword. And there's people walking around, you know, with white lanyards supposedly helping people. I mean, I have a very dim view of all of this, but it does mean that society is embracing slowly this concept that mental health actually exists. We're not there yet by any means. But if you rewind the clock 20 years to the time that you're talking about, no, none of that existed. You know, it was pull yourself together later.
I think that your perception of it, I think if you asked a cross-section of people that suffered with mental health illness, if they had the same view as you, that they would feel differently. So yes, everybody has mental health. Well, not everybody does have a mental health policy, but if you took a cross-section of people, and actually it's in the study that we did, people that don't have mental health conditions think that we're doing okay and that we're doing better than we did 20 years ago. And we are, that's fine. But people that do have mental health conditions, do you think that they phone up and say, oh, you know, I'm just not feeling it? I don't. It's like,
No.
I'll be honest with you, yeah. I've made Blackout, and that's about as exposed, I think, as you can probably get. At some point, I'm going to release this. Everybody at work knows. Do you think I phone up work and go, do you know what? I can't manage it today. I don't. I don't.
Have you ever?
No. No. It's always been a headache, or I don't. I try very hard, and I'm lucky enough to be at a point in my life where I can manage it and cope. But there have, like, over this period, for example, have I phoned work and said, could you lower your expectations of me now? No. Not brave enough. Don't think they're ready to hear it.
Don't think they're ready to hear it, or you're ready to do it?
Well, I think it comes back to what you were saying yesterday about, am I applying too high an expectation to myself? I think that's the problem, isn't it?
But then, yeah. But then,
I don't like to admit that I can't do something. It's very difficult because, again, watching back that video, I don't like people to see me down, but if I give in to be defeated by it, if I give in to that, what I was trying to get across to you yesterday was, if you make excuses and say it's okay, Mig, you can be depressed. You know, I mean, immediately as my friend, you were just like, you need to just take time out or whatever else. That's what, you know, I could see the empathy, and you were like, oh, you know, you just need to take some time out and stuff. But actually, I could take lots of time out and not get back up. Do you know what I mean? So applying too many, what's the word, like, if you apply too much empathy to it, you're exacerbating it for me. So
no, I think you're talking about indulging it rather than, but that's not to say that you don't need to take time out when you're in that situation, and you're not entitled to take time out. But I get what you're saying about, you know, allowing you to sort of wallow, if that's the right word. It's probably not, or indulge.
Yeah, wallow. I use wallow as a word. It's not really close to quite how low it is for me, but
you let it. Yeah, I mean, you just kind of embrace it, you know.
If you do embrace it and you end up on like day 4 or 5,
yeah,
like anything, routines can become habitual, can't they? Do you know what I mean? So if you get yourself into some ridiculously unhealthy, ridiculous habit or something, it can become really hard to break that habit.
Sure.
So,
but then, but also, I'd say, you know, you rang me yesterday morning in order to do this video, to do the interview we did yesterday. That was from you. That was the impetus from you. You wanted to document it. You wanted to do it. You know, so there was something in there, wasn't there, wanting to do something. You know, wanting to.
Because I've learned this over the years. I've sometimes not managed it, and I've had long periods of my life where I've been like that, pretty much. You know, and I've been the robot that goes to work, and then I'll go home, and behind closed doors, I'm literally just like that the whole time. Then I'll get up and I'll go to work, put a game face on, and then I'll go home, and that's what I'm like all of the time. So I think for me, hitting day 4 of feeling like that was scary, and so it was like, I need to make I need to be doing something that's more productive. And so, you know, talking, exercise, wasn't winning the exercise battle at all. Go out for a run. Yeah, it's not, yeah, that involves putting clothes on and going outside and beginning to jog. It's just honestly, I can't even begin to tell you how that's really wasn't going to happen. But I did run yesterday as well, so I did go out for a run. It was the most painful run ever, and really hard work, but I did do it. I think this is a little bit like has been a little bit like an experiment for me, because this is all new territory for me. Talking is new. Please I don't want anyone to think that this is like I've been doing this for ages. I haven't at all. You can advocate how little I talked when I started the Blackout project. I mean, you literally had to pull this information out of me. It didn't come freely, did it?
No.
Worked really hard to get this information out of me. So ask me if I want to still go to sleep and never wake up now. Ask me.
Okay. Do you want to go to sleep and never wake up?
No. I'm okay to tackle life today.
Right.